New this morning, President Trump's efforts to reshape the nation's trade policy have taken a hit after a federal appeals court ruled that most of his sweeping global tariffs are unlawful. However, the ruling will not take effect until at least October 14th. Now, that gives the Trump administration time to file an appeal with the Supreme Court. CNN's chief data analyst Harry Enten joins me now on how Americans are feeling about tariffs. And it's interesting, you and I were talking about this. I never viewed tariffs as popular with Americans, but at least for Trump's base and supporters, at one point, they were really giving him the benefit of the doubt here.
Yeah, they really were, Bianna. And I will note, it was not just the base. It was the overall American public. And they have turned against tariffs the same way college football pundits have turned against Arch Manning after his performance in Columbus on Saturday. Look at this. New tariffs on imported goods. You go back to November of 2024. Look, the popular position was favor. They favored new tariffs on imported goods, 52%, 48% opposed. You go to this side of the ledger, look at that, the opposition up like a rocket. We're talking about 60% opposing new tariffs compared to just 40% who favored. So it was majority favor back when Trump was reelected in November of 2024. Now it's a clear 3 in 5 Americans oppose it. The Americans have gotten a taste of the tariffs and they spit it right out.
So is the taste paying more? I mean, because that's how economists have always described this, as actually a tax on consumers.
Yes, it's exactly right. Why is the opposition up like a rocket? Well, it all comes down to money out of the pocketbook, right? Impact of tariffs on prices. Look at this in the short term. 77% of Americans now agree they raise prices in the short term. Look at this itty bitty number at the bottom. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. When you can count it on your own hand, you know it's a small percentage. Just 4% of Americans believe that in the short term, tariffs decrease prices. Long term, look, this has long been the Donald Trump argument, right? That even if there's short term pain, in the long term will pay off. Not according to Americans. Impact of tariffs on prices, even over the long term, look at that. 50% say increase. Just 25%, just half the level, say decrease. And while 25% in this particular case is better than 4%, 25% is way less than 50% of Americans who say that, in fact, prices will increase over the long term because of tariffs.
Can you do me a favor and go find who the 4% are?
I will go ahead. I will do some
on-the-street reporting.
I'm sure I can go out to Times Square and see what I can find out there.
Okay, but in all seriousness, from the tariff policy to the trade policy, how is it impacting Trump's overall approval?
Right, okay. If this was happening in a bubble, right, and it was, okay, I don't like tariffs, but it isn't impacting my overall view of Trump, I think Trump would be like, forget about it, doesn't matter. But this is why the political implications are so important, because Fox News literally asked, what's the top reason that Trump's doing a bad job? What ranks as number one? The economy, and tariffs ranks as number one. The number one reason why those who disapprove of Trump think he's doing a bad job, it comes right back to tariffs. The bottom line is this: when prices go up, presidential approval ratings go down, and that's exactly what we are seeing in the polling
Perhaps
data.
This was the deflection that Ron Brownstein was talking about in a segment in the last hour about the increase in these ICE raids, because they're deflecting from something the president is not happy about.
That's often something that Donald Trump will do, is if he sees something he doesn't like, he's going to go in the other direction and try and bring the American mindset with him.
All right. Harry Enten, good to be with you.
Nice to be with you.
All right, with us now is Congressman Lloyd Doggett, a Democrat from Texas. Congressman, I got to ask you, you're in Austin, I think, this morning. I don't know if you heard Harry Enten just there take this unprovoked swipe at quarterback Arch Manning. I just want to give you a chance to respond to that this morning, since you had to listen to it.
Well, absolutely. I was appalled. I'm very much Longhorn and hook 'em horns. We're going to have a better week ahead. It was a tough game. Well played by Ohio State, and I think Texas will get better and better and come back, and it will be a good season for us. And the issue of the day, John.
After what Harry said, I had to give you equal time. I think there are rules for me to do that there. Listen, Congressman, you also heard Harry there talking about tariffs and the slipping popularity of the tariffs and concerns about the economy. What are you hearing from your constituents around Austin?
Well, those that remember, President Trump told us in January that he was going to bring prices drastically down. And whether it's a cup of coffee or a new car or any number of things in between at the grocery store, prices keep going up as a direct result of President Trump imposing a new tax by himself called a tariff. And we are now paying significantly more than we were at the beginning of the year in Trump tariff taxes. I think as manufacturers or as importers deplete their inventory we will have more and more of an impact. Don't know the impact on the holidays, but the prices will be higher everywhere. John, I see all of this just like the other issues you've been discussing this morning and reporting on, whether it's the invasion of American cities with the military, the tariff tax, the decision by the president to repeal or terminate funding that a Republican Congress had approved. All of these things are just part of a pattern of President Trump wanting unrestrained one-man rule, which we call tyranny or dictatorship. And that's the path that we're on. And the Republican Congress is sitting there idly, willing to approve anything that he does, or at least to be quiet about it if they're unwilling to give it a direct approval.
You just brought up rescissions, repealing funding that Congress has approved. There are some members of your party who think this is grounds to shut down the government by the end of the month. Where do you stand on that?
Well, it's a very tough decision. I think if the government shut down, it will clearly be the result of the Trump administration. I voted previously against a continuing resolution. We faced the question of whether we are in what is the least worst alternative. Are we in a worse situation if Trump is there with no government funding approved, or in trying to reach some kind of agreement where we know we are dealing with a totally untrustworthy individual in the form of Trump? The fact that a Republican Congress approves money for international peacekeeping, for democracy promotion, for economic development, so that we don't let the Chinese rule the underdeveloped world. All of these are things that Trump just said, I'll terminate it, and you can't do anything about it. We could do something about it this week or next, but Republicans are unlikely to let us even have a debate or vote on this, because they are so intent, so fearful, I guess, really, of Trump imposing a mean tweet against one of them, that they won't take action if it differs from Trump in the slightest. The only exception has been the Jeffrey Epstein sex tapes, and we'll see whether Republicans are willing to get to the bottom of that or not.
Discharge petition could ripen. You could have a vote on that soon this month. It does sound like you have some concerns, as do many Democrats, that actually shutting down the government might give the president even more power to take unilateral action. But I do want to ask you about another subject quickly, because I know it's something you care deeply about. Obviously, the floods in Texas, which killed so many people, including children. You are still asking questions of the federal government, and you seem to be having a hard time getting answers. What are you asking? What are they telling you?
Well, John, that's so true. I was there for the prayer service for one of these little second graders. To lose 27 people, from mostly little girls, from one camp, and 116 in all, is something that is so painful. I was asking, before this tragedy happened, for the NOAA and the National Weather Service to tell us about the impact of Trump's slash and burn, Elon Musk coming in, eliminating people no matter how good they were, not with a matter of efficiency, but wanting to build up a federal body count. I've simply been asking, since this tragedy, this catastrophe, give us the data on what actually happened that night. We know that critical positions were not filled that night. Some question as to whether camps and people in the area, other than one person in Kerr County who apparently was asleep, got the notice in the middle of the night to rescue and prevent this from ever happening. The National Weather Service, for 2 months, though its director told me it would be easy to produce the call logs, the chat logs, the radar logs, so we can find out what actually happened that night, they've stonewalled me and they failed to produce it. I think there were mistakes, errors, gross negligence at the local level, a failure by the state of Texas, but we need to understand what went wrong at the federal level in order to prevent this from happening again. And of course, this unresponsiveness, this is characteristic of this administration that doesn't believe in transparency, because when you have one man authoritarian rule, you don't have to have any accountability with a Republican Congress that is so compliant.
Congressman Lloyd Doggett from Texas, we do appreciate your time today. Headed back to Washington, I know, this week.